I'm Liz Ndoye, and I'm so thrilled to be with you here tonight at the next in the series of drawing lessons hosted by the Hoboken Public Library. It's great to do drawing during this time of pandemic when you're isolated at home. We've talked about that before, but it bears mentioning it again. Drawing is almost therapeutic in the meditative quality that it has. So just a recap of what we were doing last week, we completed drawing a full human figure. Previous to that, we had discussed the fact that the human figure is an average of about 7.5 head lengths long. You can literally measure the human body by head lengths. You can measure the length of the arms and legs also by head lengths, and in fact you can measure from the neck to the hips to measure the torso in head lengths as well. All right, we today, I'm thrilled to be saying, will be completing a figurative drawing, and we're also going to delve into the use of color. Last week we built form in the figure as well by learning how to do shading and making objects look three-dimensional. This week we're going to do a little bit with drawing first. I'm going to do a gesture drawing of a dancer in a beautiful pose that I found online. And I'm going to do line work first, preceded by showing you a little bit about color theory, and then we will proceed to work on the color that you see visible in the human figure and in the clothing that this particular dancer is wearing. So here we go. I found this image of a dancer. It's quite a wonderful active pose. She has her arms extended way up in the air, and she is on point. There's a very dramatic sweep of her clothing. It's a skirt attached to the bottom of her leotard on both sides of the figure. And I literally chose this image because you can use the edge of her skirt to measure the length of her arms. Notice where the tips of her fingers are right at the outermost corner of the fabric at the bottom of her skirt. And on this side of her body, on the right side of her body, our left side, you can see that the edge of the drapery in the skirt matches up, lines up exactly with where her wrist is. Those are the kinds of measuring tools and devices that you can use to make drawing much easier for you. Once you can see relationships, for example, where her fingertips are in relationship to the edge of her clothing, then drawing proportions become incredibly easy. You can notice where the bottom edge of her skirt is next to the heel of her toe shoe. That will help you see the length of her legs. All right, quick gestural drawing in pencil first. We always start lightly in pencil. I love the arch of her very long neck here. Her arms are sweeping off right to the edge of the page. In fact, I can't fit her full hand on the page. Her wrist really is about at the top edge of the page. You can notice how long her arms are too, but how much higher her hands are next to her head. I'm guessing it's probably 1, 2, a little bit over 2.5 head lengths to the tips of her fingers on her right side, starting from the chin up. So that's quite a distance from her torso to the tip of her fingers. Her head is turned slightly to the right. Her long, elegant neck is also tilted to her right. It's quite a distinct arc to the right. You can actually see the veins in her neck also following that right-hand curve. The edge of her leotard, a nice curve here at the bottom of her neck. Short little bit of shoulder over here on the left, and then her left arm, like the right, sweeps way up to the top corner of the page. Her chest, her breast, is protruding a little bit on her left side. The right breast also is protruding out, and her rib cage and stomach area are quite pronounced in their curvature as well. Her right side, the back, is also arcing way to the right, and her waist curves it's a very hard curve inwards here. Her rear end arcs way over to the right. The top of her thigh. You see the way the leg extends all the way to the left and in front. Her kneecap, and then her beautiful calf. The left tip of her body is a little tricky because it's hidden by the drapery of her fabric, but I can see just very lightly that her left hip is sweeping way over to the right, and her left leg, most of her weight is carried on the left leg, and it too is arcing way to the right side now. So it's her left leg, but it's moving to the right and back slightly. Now, in my drawing, I really get about this far on my paper. That's okay. Frequently, when artists draw, they extend the image right off the edge of the paper and don't worry about capturing the entire figure. And the reason for that is it creates a very dynamic, exciting composition. So it's okay if you can't fit the whole figure on the page. It's quite all right. Now I want to show her skirt, and I can do that very quickly. The edge of her flying skirt. You only really need to do a few quick lines to indicate where they fall. So that's all you really need to proceed for the rest of the drawing. But now we're going to take a little break from drawing, and I'm going to talk with you briefly about color. This is a color wheel. Color wheels were invented by artists to help them remember how to do color mixing. And color theory is so simple and basic. There are three primary colors: red, blue, and yellow. They're called primary colors because they can't be mixed. The only way you can get primary colors is from a tube or bottle or stick if you're using crayons, colored pencils, or pastels. So again, the three primaries are red, blue, and yellow. You mix red with blue, you create violet, red with yellow, orange, yellow with blue, green. Now, neutral colors will be important for you to use because neutral colors help you to create the various skin tones that you'll see in the human figure. They will also help you to work with shading. The neutral colors are created by mixing the primary color with its opposite on the color wheel. So anytime you need a neutral color in the brown-gray range, you can mix red with green, yellow with violet, blue with orange. So any of the primaries with their opposite on the color wheel will create neutral colors. And in a moment, I'm going to show you exactly how that works. Let's do a recap. Red with green will make earth or neutral tones. Yellow with violet will make earth tones. And blue with orange, the primary color with its opposite on the color wheel. I'm going to first outline the pencil drawing that I made with marker, so it will be more visible to you at home. Remember, at this point, it's a simple gestural drawing. If you are a beginning artist, I would not recommend using Sharpie at this point. And ordinarily, I wouldn't use Sharpie, but again, I want to make my pencil sketch visible for you. This is the edge of her skirt. Her hips. And her legs. Okay, so this enables us now to start using color. And the first thing that I'm using pastels, soft pastels for you today. If you are lucky enough to have soft pastels at home, I prefer using them when I'm doing figurative work because the colors are very soft and gentle. You can use watercolor paints, you can use acrylics, you can even use crayons or colored pencils if that's all that you have available to you. Again, you can order art supplies online. Dick Blick is my personal favorite art supply house. They tend to be the cheapest and they have a huge variety of items for sale. The first thing I want to demonstrate for you is how to use primary colors to make secondary colors. Red and yellow. When mixed together, will make orange. Red with yellow will make orange. The more red you use, the more red-orange you will have. The more yellow you use, the more yellow-orange you will create. I like to put down the lightest color first. Notice I put yellow first, and then the darker primary color on top. It's much easier to make a color darker than it is to try and lighten it up. So blue with yellow, you will get a greenish color. It may not be the perfect shade of green, So you keep experimenting till you get closer to the shade of green that you want. Perhaps it needs a little more yellow. Let's try that. I also have red pastel on my fingers, so that's not helping. But the final mixture would be red with blue to make violet. And you can see that it's a violet shade. Now, I'm ready to begin. I'm so excited. I'm going to start with her clothing first. If you recall, it's a kind of beautiful yellow-green. And remember how I said earlier, you can use pastels and you can use color for shading when you do figurative work. Notice how underneath the drapery of her skirt, it's darker, and on the top where the light is hitting strongest, it's going to be the darkest. So again, I like to start with the lightest color first, particularly since the top of her clothing is lighter in value, lighter and brighter in value. And another suggestion you can use, if you don't want to get your fingers messy, you can use a paper towel for blending. And remember to use lighter colors and just a little bit of the dark color added gradually. So we're getting more of a green tone now because I'm not using my fingers, which also have red on them. If you don't get the color you want the first time, just keep experimenting, keep adding more color until you achieve a color more to your liking. And you can see how the figure is starting to look more three-dimensional and real. Now I want to remind you about how to create those neutral colors. If you want a darker shade of green or a more brownish earth tone shade of green, if you remember from the color wheel, mixing red with green will give you a neutral shade. Let's see if that works. So we have our green here, yellow with blue. If we put a tiny bit of red, it should neutralize the greenish color and give us a more brownish green. Now I'm going to start doing it directly on the figure because I think you'll be able to see better. This I would not recommend. It's really best to mix your colors on a palette beforehand rather than directly on your painting, and you can probably guess why. If you make mistakes, it's much easier to correct the color mistake on the palette than it is on your drawing. You don't want to do all that work only to find that the color you've used isn't what you like. So you can already see that a greenish color is coming out. And watch what happens when we mix. Look what happens when we mix the red with the green. Just a tiny bit of red to begin with. And you see how it's a more brownish, neutral color, because red and green are opposite each other on the color wheel. And they will neutralize or brown down the color. So for me, it's still a little bit too red. So I'm going to add a little bit more yellow and blue. Yellow and blue make green. So, and notice how I'm using the color the way we use the graphite pencil for shading. So where the colors are darkest, more shadow will appear. This is where her chest is curving outwards. And by blending the red with the green, we're getting a more neutral color. So I'm not going to do too much more with her clothing because I want to spend our last few minutes talking briefly about how to create skin tones. If you are using pastels and you have a set with a large number of colors, you may be able to find colors that approximate skin tone. And I love when people ask me, Liz, how do you make skin tone? And my first response to a question like that is, what do you mean skin tone? Whose skin tone? Everyone on earth has different colored skin. So you have to observe the actual color that you see before you. She is Caucasian and has rather light skin. So in order to mix her skin tone, I want to remember how red neutralizes green and mix some of the red with some of the green that I had earlier. And then in my pastel kit, I have kind of a light peach color. And I'm going to mix a bit of the peach in with the color that I created already. And that will approximate the skin tone, the skin color on this dancer. She's light-skinned, but she's more in the peach family. Now I'm going to do what I did not recommend earlier, but it will make it easier for you to see. I'm going to create the color right on the drawing itself. For you, remember, it's better to work on your palette first, and you can even do this with crayon and pastel. Test the color out on your palette first. Don't do it directly on your drawing first. Okay, so first I'm making a greenish tone. Doesn't make sense, but if you know any people who are makeup artists, they'll tell you that a green base actually is a great way to approximate natural light skin tone. So I have my greenish color, and now I'm going to take that peach color, and notice the way her leg is in such bright light on the left-hand outer side. And that's where I'm going to use the peach. Remember, as always, blend. Use the tips of your fingers or a paper towel. And you can see that we're getting closer to a skin shade. Now here's a wonderful example about how shading can be done with color, because the inside, or the left-hand side of her leg, is much darker. So I'm going to go back to that green shade to approximate where the shadow is on her leg. I'm using the dark blue predominantly because it is so much darker than the rest of her leg. So now the shadow seems to be a dark green. Well, that's not the way it appears in real life. So what do I do? What neutralizes green? The primary opposite, red. A little bit of red, blend it, and you get a lovely brown shadow on the darker edge of her leg. And even if some of the yellow and the green shows, it's quite all right, because it makes the color work in your drawing so much more interesting if you see the artist's hand and it's not perfect. So quick recap. A quick review. Red, blue, and yellow, 3 primary colors. When you mix them with their opposite on the color wheel, you get a neutral brownish color. When you mix the 2 primaries together, you get secondary colors. Red with blue, violet blue with yellow, green, yellow with red, orange. I want to thank you all for joining me tonight in this wonderful drawing session. I hope this week that you will work on the human figure gestural drawings first, and then use color with paint, pastel, chalk, crayon, whatever you have available in wherever you are isolating. A big thank you to the Hoboken Library again for sponsoring and hosting these lessons. You will find these videos online at the Hoboken Library website. Please do visit. And if you like this lesson, you can go back and see the previous lessons. And you can also look forward to our series of lessons in May. We will be taking a break from drawing the human figure and visiting the work of several Asian American artists. It will be great fun to learn about new artists and create art projects inspired by them. Have a great week. Remember to stay home and stay safe. Bye-bye.